Well, hello friends. Welcome back to my mom's house. 1 hour after the previous video. I invited people to ask questions and we already got a whole bunch. So I thought, why not just answer them right away? So without further ado, Red J writes, I have a question. Have you ever thought about quitting with Serenity or other projects or even things outside of programming? And what advice would you give to anyone who feels like quitting a project? So I've never thought about quitting Serenity. That's not something that exists on my radar because when I got into this project, I knew that it was going to be a lifetime commitment because to me, Serenity represents not just a software development project, but a sort of cornerstone or anchor to build a new life around, a healthy life. And um, the idea of quitting doesn't exist to me. But I've certainly thought about quitting other projects, and I have quit many projects in my life, and I don't really regret quitting anything in particular. I think the idea that just because you've started something means that you have to also finish it is maybe a little bit misguided because just because something is worth starting doesn't mean that everything has to be like seen through or finished. On the contrary, I think it's really good to start many things and explore what works, what doesn't work, and to be willing to just let go once you have accumulated enough information about something. So, as for advice to somebody who's feeling like quitting a project, I would say just be honest with yourself and investigate whether you want to quit because you're lazy or because it seems hard or because you have learned enough about the project that you know now that this doesn't work or this is not for you and you want to do something else instead. Um, I think when you want to quit, that's just something you have to um, be very honest with yourself about and come up with the real reason and then take it from there. Okay, and then Gabriel writes, video on Pendlay rows versus BB style rows for explosive back strength. So I don't really have an opinion on Pendlay rows because I don't enjoy doing them, but I know that they work really well for a lot of people. Um, I personally enjoy T-bar rows, but I am not a um, fitness or bodybuilding advice channel. I'm just a recreational lifter. And I know that you are just memeing, but um, I don't know. Just do the rows that you like. And then let's see. Nikki writes, I think more Q&A would be really nice to stay in touch. Well, that's what we're doing. And so far, so good. So Dimitri writes, what do you do to stay passionate and motivated about the project, or does it come naturally? It does come naturally. I have to admit, I am extremely passionate about the project and what it represents. And it is easy for me because it is a project about my personal passions and my personal ideals about software, right? So it would be weird if I would suddenly lose that passion because it would mean that my personal software passion had drifted out somewhere. Um, I think, of course, like I have ups and downs like anybody, and some days it does take me a long time to get started, and other days it's just really easy from when I wake up to when I go to sleep. Um, but in terms of things I do to stay passionate is I just stay active. Like I stay actively programming, actively researching things that I take inspiration from. So for example, in the last week, I've been installing a lot of old image editing software to sort of refamiliarize myself with the interface of 1990s Photoshop and Paint Shop Pro and apps like that. And that has been really interesting. And I find so many things I want to do from that. Um, but basically, what I do is I stay active because I think as long as you are doing stuff and like making some kind of incremental progress, motivation just um, is not required. Like you don't need motivation if you have momentum. So I guess that's sort of my mindset. I've talked about that a bunch before about how motivation is fickle and unreliable, and discipline is a much more reliable source of energy, at least for me. So by staying active and continuing to do something every day, um, that's what works for me. Okay, and then Green Coder writes, I have a non-technical question. How are you able to maintain focus for such a long period of time? I have been programming for almost 3 years now, and I usually take a 5 to 10 minute break after focusing for 1 hour or longer. If I continue without any breaks for as long as you do, I feel very distracted and my attention seems foggy. Do you have any recommendations to improve focus for a longer period of time? Or do you think this is just something that comes with a lot of practice and experience? Uh, so I don't have any particular tricks for this. What I do that helps me is I drink tea. I make sure that I don't have to get up to get tea. Uh, and just having a beverage, I find, helps me stay focused. And really, the main thing I think that you see in my videos is that when I start recording, I commit to whatever goal I have for that video. I'm gonna see this through, like whatever it takes. I'm just gonna keep recording until I get the thing done. And I sort of eliminate the idea of taking a break or pausing to think too much, and just say, we're gonna do this, and there's no choice in the matter. That's definitely something that I have become a lot better at in the course of making this YouTube channel. If you go and look at my early videos, you can see me struggling a lot with whenever I hit any kind of speed bump or roadblock, I sort of get lost and disoriented. And just by making so many videos and getting so much practice of this commitment, where I commit to a goal, right, for the duration of a video, however long it ends up being, that definitely comes with practice. And I do recommend to everybody that even if you don't make a YouTube channel, I do think everybody should at least try recording themselves while programming and try to narrate your process, just to see how it feels, because I have learned so much about myself from doing this, and I think I have become such a much stronger developer, and my ability to think in parallel with typing, for example, has dramatically improved. So definitely something to consider trying, I think, recording yourself. But either way, yes, it does come with practice and experience, but you do have to practice to get the experience. Like, you can't just wait for the experience. You do have to practice actively. Okay, and then somebody with Roman numerals in their name asks, what Biscuit videos did you watch, and which one did you like the most? Oh, that's a good question. I have watched probably all of the Biscuit videos, and I think maybe the one I liked the most was when he was making a text-to-speech synthesizer, because if I recall correctly, it was about Finnish phonetics, and it was just fascinating to see. I had no idea how text-to-speech worked, and I really enjoyed seeing him build something in that area. But I watch all of Biscuit's videos, and I support Biscuit on Patreon because I think Biscuit is awesome. If you haven't heard about Biscuit, go check out Biscuit on YouTube. Anyway, Welkosh writes, "Hi Andreas, given the speed with which the project is growing, do you think the one repository to rule them all policy is sustainable in the long run? Do you consider splitting Serenity into smaller projects, for example, a separate repository for the browser, etc.? I think the monorepo policy is sustainable in the long run, yes. And I think it's not just sustainable, it is absolutely crucial that we keep developing the system this way, because the moment you fragment the development environment, you start to introduce sort of cognitive latency between components. And that, in my experience, invariably leads to sort of quality decay over time. And just integration suffers when things are not built in lockstep. So far, it has not been an issue, I think, in any way. We have only had really benefits from it. There are some concerns about the build time. Of course, like any C++ project that grows past 10 files, people start to care about build time. We're no different. We are taking some steps to improve that situation. We've been investigating recently classifying different parts of the system as like required versus recommended versus neither required nor recommended. And just sort of streamlining the parts, or making the default build of the system a bit smaller and giving you the ability, if you want to build a minimal version. For example, if you are working on a kernel feature, you might not want to build the web browser all the time when you're testing something. Things like that. We are exploring stuff in that area, but we're definitely staying in one repository because the benefits far outweigh the problems, I think. Okay, and then Munuku, sorry, writes, I don't really think you're losing touch with the audience. We have IRC, Discord, heck, you upload videos here. Videos of reviewing code, improving the project itself, porting games, etc. If it's not a way, if not the best way to communicate with people who are interested in this project, I don't know what is. Well, thank you, Munuko. I am glad to hear that at least you feel like we're in touch. I hope that we can improve the situation, even if you already feel that it's good. And I'm just reloading the comment page, and oh my goodness, there are so many things here. And someone says, Angelo says, my man just casually wears Serenity OS merch without even mentioning it. Well, it's just a t-shirt. I didn't even realize I was wearing it, to be honest. So let's see, memes.pdf writes, not a question, just a note from a newish viewer. I love your YouTube videos. They always inspire me to continue whatever side project I'm working on at the moment. Thank you for your work. Well, thank you for your comment, memes.pdf. I'm glad to hear that you feel inspired to continue on your side projects. As I was telling the person earlier, just, be honest with yourself about when you've learned enough about a side project that it might be time to move on to something else. Let's see. Ride or Hitchhike writes, sadly, this is the predictable result of growing. You're only human and you can't answer everyone when the community gets beyond a certain size. While it's nice that others can help when you aren't around, it does feel like you're on top of an ivory tower, so to speak, as the community gets bigger, due to how much you have to splinter your attention span. Yeah, I mean, it is true in some respects, right? But that doesn't mean that we just have to give up and not try to do something against the natural tendency of isolation. So that's what we're trying to do here. Because I don't want to go in the ivory tower. when I worked at Apple, for example, they would sometimes ask me, "Hey, do you want to get into management and away from programming?" And that's not something I wanted, because I don't want to lose touch with programming, and um, I don't want to not write code. So, in the same way, I don't want to not talk with people and be on top of um, everything socially. But yeah, I mean, I know I have to be realistic. I can't do everything and scale myself in it infinitely. But eh, let's try. It's worth trying. So, anyways, Alexei writes, could you please tell us about promotion of open source projects? How to do it, what problems there are, what to expect from it? Ooh, I don't really know much about promotion of open source projects. I know how to promote my own project. Um, okay, yeah. So let me think. I guess I do know some stuff about the promotion of open source project. Um, I don't necessarily know how to promote your open source project, but I can tell you what has worked really well for me. And that is this YouTube channel has been absolutely amazing for me. I think without it, Serenity wouldn't be anywhere near what it is today. And it's not just about reaching people so that they can know that the system exists, but um, by making so much content about the development of the system and sharing my thought process as I work on it, I am communicating to people who become interested in the system exactly what goes into it. And I think there's a huge difference between seeing an open source project and sort of joining it and hacking on it. If you compare that to joining Serenity and being able to see me as I build a lot of these things that you then work on, and you can know so much more about the history behind stuff and what thought went into it and what little random ideas I had while building something that didn't actually come true. And that's something that happens so often that, for example, I mentioned some idea about something in a video that, like, oh, it would be cool if this thing could do that, and then I forget about it. But and a few hours after I published the video, somebody shows up with a pull request and said, hey, you mentioned this idea in your video, so I made it do the thing. um, I think YouTube has been absolutely amazing as a way to promote this open source project. um, it is certainly also extremely time consuming to do what I do and make videos about development, but um, it has worked amazingly well. So I I do really recommend other projects try the same thing if they're interested, if they're up for it. I know that not everybody feels comfortable appearing on video or audio or even sharing their workflow and stuff, but you can't deny that it has worked really well for this project. So I do have to mention that. Um, I think another thing that works well for me is I'm fairly active on Twitter, and um, I do get a lot of people discovering the system through that. Um, I think just generally like being present um, and um, not just, I don't know. I don't want to talk about I don't want to talk out of my ass about what works and what doesn't work on something like Twitter, because I think maybe I'm just lucky um, that people happen to like this project, so they just follow me on Twitter because of that. I don't know. I haven't thought too much about it, so I'm probably gonna sound like an idiot if I try to distill it into anything like advice. So I will just say that whatever it is I'm doing on Twitter, people do follow me and learn about Serenity that way. So it seems to me that social media is definitely a reasonably good way for people to find out about your project. Let's leave it at that. I need to think more about what works and what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. Okay, so Daniel writes, I have been following Serenity OS for a while, but my question is, when is it going to be ready for more bare metal use and more up-to-date drivers for AHCI, SATA, newer CPUs, etc., like a daily operating system? Are we talking 5-10 years until you and the other developers are ready? So there are people working on bare metal support right now. AHCI, for example, is actively being worked on. I think Luke has been doing a bunch of stuff with that, Leov. And they are coordinating that work in the bare metal channel on Discord. But for me personally, like, bare metal is not a priority, it's just a feature. And I know that that comes as a surprise to many people, but I have as I mentioned earlier, like, for me, this is a lifelong project, and I have a very, very long-term perspective on everything. And there are so many things I want to do, and I don't feel particularly rushed to run this on bare metal because I know that I will get there one day. And for me, I would rather ride the waves of working on things that are super interesting, that I think increase the quality of the system in great ways right now, instead of sort of trying to force myself to work on bare metal support because that's what you're supposed to do. And the result then is that other people who are much more interested in bare metal stuff than I am end up working on it. And then we get a system that's built by people who are really interested in what they're doing. And that's really at the end of the day what I want for other people who work on the system. I want everybody to work on stuff that interests them. I don't want anybody to feel forced to work on anything except fixing regressions that they caused. I do want to have a bit of a culture where if you break something, you fix it. But yeah, so to answer your question, like, how long until it works on XYZ hardware? No idea. Maybe tomorrow, maybe in 10 years. It really all depends on somebody being interested in that, showing up and doing the work. And if nobody does it, I will eventually get to it because I do intend to run it as my main system one day when it's ready, when I feel the quality and the convenience is where I want it to be. I will get to it if nobody does, but if not, I would really prefer it if somebody who really enjoys that type of thing just comes in and makes it their own project. So no idea when it will be running like that. I'm gonna refresh here one more time. Let's see, so many things. So Graham writes, have you had any thoughts about having Serenity run on devices like the Raspberry Pi? I have not really thought about that. I've never had a Raspberry Pi. I'm not super into like low power, low capacity computers. I always just like desktop computers, laptops. But people are certainly welcome to port the system to anything they like. And I would be happy to help guide anybody who works on something like that. But let's see. Okay, so Les writes, thank you so much for making this OS. I learned so much about the inner workings of an operating system while reading your code. Not only has it helped me in understanding what was taught in my OS course on a practical level, it also helped me understand about how to think from first principles. Again, thank you so much for your time and dedication for this project. Well, it's lovely to hear, Laz. Thank you for writing. I think that's something that I really like about Serenity, that that is most, if not all of it, is written sort of from first principles by people who didn't really know how to do the thing that they did when they started on it. Like when I started on this, I didn't know how to build an operating system really, or all of the different apps. Like I didn't know how to build a file manager or a window manager or a text editor. I just kind of figured it out as I went. And um, by doing that, I attracted all these other people who added their own things to the system that they had to figure out how to do. And I think when you look at it now, like, sure, it doesn't do everything the objectively, academically optimal way, but just looking at it and knowing that people figured this out on their own, I think that's so cool. And yeah, it's something I really like about it. And I love hearing like this, that it helps you understand your OS course on a practical level. That's so cool. Okay, so last question is from RS, who writes, do you think in English or Swedish? I think in English. I have since I was quite young, and I don't know why, it just happened. And I sometimes, if I get really, really emotional, my brain regresses to Swedish thinking. If I get really sad or really upset. But if I'm just sort of logically thinking, then it's English happening in the brain. So yeah, those were all the questions that have come in so far. I'm not going to refresh again because we have a long enough video here. So thank you everybody for commenting, and feel free to leave more questions on this video or on the last one, and we'll get to those in the next one. And it's good to be back answering some questions. We should do more of this. This is nice. So I hope that was interesting to somebody, and thank you very much for hanging out with me here. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.